everybody to the Maitland City Council meeting, October 11th, 2021. Everybody please silence their electronic devices. We can get underway. Councilmember Paul Harrison is unavoidably detained and will not be here this evening, so we're going to have to try to get through with just the four of us. We don't have an indication this evening, but it is worth noting that today is the first federally recognized Indigenous Peoples Day, so let's keep Indigenous people in mind. And with that, it is appropriate that we stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have just a couple of items this evening, and the first is the Thurston House lease and the ordinance which will allow it to happen. And Maria, to read the title.
An ordinance of the City of Maitland, Florida, authorizing the city manager or designee to lease certain properties owned by the City of Maitland, providing for conflicts and providing for an effective date.
Okay. Mark, would you introduce the item for the meeting?
Yes. Since last meeting, there was one minor change. Councilman Wild brought up the fact that premises and leased premises were used interchangeably within the lease without any distinction. So what we've done is change that for consistency and also changed it up front, so there's no doubt that they mean the same thing. So other than that, the only thing that's different from the old lease to the new lease is the no fetch clause, the security and advanced lease deposits, requirement that the tenants remain on site when guests are present, and the reference to the city arborist has been changed to public works director or designee due to the transitional nature of that position over time.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Reagan? On the Thurston House lease? Any other issues with the lease at all? All right, here now, let's open the public hearing on this. So now is the time if anybody would like to address the council on this. It's appropriate to come to the podium and let us hear it. Seeing none, let's close the public hearing. And there's only four of us here tonight, and Lindsay is not with us. Share her thoughts with us, so it may be appropriate to table this or continue this until she's available next time, rather than.
I agree with that. I think we should I'll make a motion to continue it to
I'll second it.
the next public meeting, which would be October 25th. Am I right on that?
Yeah. All right. So we have a motion to table this until the 25th of this month, and a second. Maria, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay. City manager, is there any old business to report to our assistant city manager? Whoever is going to.
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have the consent agenda, and I would ask if any member of council would like to remove an item on there. I would like to remove that if anybody have a problem with that. I would like I went to the agreement for the building code services, and there were a few items there I think need a little more attention. It's probably not quite right for a decision tonight. And I've given Sharon and Mark my concern about that, so I know what it is. I don't think it's anything that we can't overcome.
So we're just going to table that for later?
Yeah, we would need a motion to table that until.
Okay.
Is there any effect at all from tabling this?
I don't know, Mark, I don't think so,
No.
because I know that we need the building inspection services, but I
Yes.
don't know that we need them tomorrow.
No.
Okay.
And the items that you're concerned about need to be placed in the cover agreement. So I already talked with Patrick about it, and we can make those changes, bring it back so you can have a full picture of what's there.
Okay, then I will make a motion that we approve item number 1 on the consent agenda and table item number 2. Oh, we need a public hearing?
Number two.
Number two, yes. Number two.
I'll second his approval of the minutes.
Okay. We have a motion and approval of the first order on the consent agenda, which is approval of minutes. Maria, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Mayor Lyons.
Aye.
And then do we need a motion to, okay, then I make a motion to table the second item on the consent agenda, the piggyback agreement for building code services, and table it to October 25th.
No, I think that's it.
Okay.
Just a second.
I'll second.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second to table the piggyback agreement until next time. Maria, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Mayor Lyons.
Aye. Okay, we've effectively dodged two items of business tonight. Let's see if we can make it right up there. Let's see, public period. Now is the time. Oh, yes, Stacy's going to take us up on it. Excellent. Now is the public period for the Maitland City Council. Anybody who wants to approach and let us know anything that they're talking about, anything that's not on the agenda, now is the time. Welcome, Ms. Larson.
Thank you. I'm Stacy Larson, the director of the Maitland Public Library, and today I brought props. So about this time every year, we usually have a massive party in the library, the Storybook Tea Party. I don't think anybody feels up to stuffing 300 children into a library in one afternoon these days just yet. So we are doing a substitute make and take event, which is our virtually magic academy. So you can come to the library and pick up one of these kits. In the kit, which is labeled potions and party favors, is everything you need for anyone who has wished they could get that letter by owl post when they're 11 years old to go to magic school. You'll have a full curriculum starting with making your own sorting hat, as well as a cute little hat for your pet. You will go to Transfiguration and learn to make a wand. Care of magical creatures. We have an owl puppet you can make. We'll enchant keys in charms class. We have, of course, some recipes for potions you'll need to master. And you also will learn to fly. We have little flying brooms for everyone. And the last thing, divination. So you'll make tea and read the tea leaves. And we have given you a code. So everything anybody needs is in this bag. It is recommended for elementary aged students. There are small parts, so not 3 and unders. And everything is here. But just like those admittance letters to your favorite magic school, opportunities are limited. Only some kids get letters by owl post. So get your potions and party favor kit soon. In fact, I recommend stopping by the library on the way home from this meeting tonight because they're going to go that fast. But everything is there. Pick yours up.
Great job.
Yeah.
Stacy. Let's get that.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Colleen Lilling, 250 Seneca Trail. And tonight I wanted to say thank you for having National Night Out. It was great to see a lot of people out. It was a lot of fun. The one thing though, we needed parking. I was wondering if that area, that way, I guess that would be our, and I'm trying to remember what, north of us, where it's kind of dilapidated parking and there's no lighting and there's a lot of brush. If you could just fix that up and be able to help us out with, when we have these events and people coming out, now we have a nice place to park, especially lighting. It's one of the things that I think would be very important. Consider that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Lilly. Was that parking lot used this time for night out there?
Wow.
It's just not, it doesn't have a lot of light, it's dark, and it's not even resurfaced right, we got a lot of brush. I
Right,
don't park there at night because of that.
right. Yes, I think that it may be, that property hopefully is sometimes slated for a different kind of a life. And I guess we're trying to make it through with what we got right there right now. But I appreciate your comments on that. And also, I don't know if you tried the parking in the garage over here.
Oh, I came here an hour late, so there was nothing available there.
Oh, okay. All right, well, all right, we'll have to consider those comments next time we have, and we're gonna have a lot more out there. It's gonna be darker earlier through until
Yeah.
December 21st. All right, anybody else? Public hearing, I think we've heard from everybody in the public. I'm not sure what Sharon's feeling like she is tonight, but staff, public, okay. Let's close the public hearing. There are no decisions this evening, so we do have a discussion item, which is the charter amendments. And unlike the Thurston House, where we don't have the comments from Ms. Hall Harrison, we do have her comments on this item tonight. So we're not going to make a decision on it, but at least we can talk and tell them about it with her, armed with her comments. Sharon, would you want to introduce the item?
Absolutely. So this is just a discussion item tonight. We're looking for direction. Just going to review the 5 items that were in the report that you accepted at the last meeting. There was also a minority report in the back, and then you received an email from Councilwoman Hall Harrison as well. The 5 recommendations in summary are replacing gendered reference with gender-neutral language, clarifying that upon vacancy of the mayor's office, the vice mayor shall serve as mayor only until the next regularly scheduled election. Clarify the waiting period for a mayor or council member who has served 2 terms will be 1 year. Eliminate the provision for decreases to future elected officials' salaries, for decreases in the consumer price index, and to clarify that council members are not prohibited from discussing the appointment or removal of city administrative officer and employees with persons other than the city manager. So those are the 5 items that were in the report. Gender neutral language is kind of a simple one. Most cities have done this. It's in the model city charter. And essentially the question that would be posed to the voters is, shall the City of Maitland's charter be amended to replace gendered references with gender neutral language? So examples of gender neutral and what's in the charter now, it still says councilmen, and that would be replaced with council members. It could be 1 word or 2. We have it as 1 word, but that's certainly your option because we currently have it as councilmen as 1 word. But it can go either way. I've seen it either way. He, which shows up a lot, would be replaced with the title, which would be, if he refers to the mayor, it would say the mayor, the manager, or the clerk, whatever the title is of that person. And his, the possessive, would be replaced with a possessive title. So the mayors, the council members, the managers, the clerks, or the word there. And he can also be replaced with they. It depends. We've gone through it and done the best we can to make the replacements make sense and read well. That is in the report. If you want to go through in the back, it shows every replacement that would happen in our current charter. Were there any questions on the gender neutral language? Okay. Vice mayor succession. So the 2012 CRC tried to tackle this, and it appeared the intent was to have the vice mayor only serve until the next election, as opposed to the way it was previously, which was the vice mayor took over the term of the mayor. And that recommendation was made because they felt there was a difference between when people elect a mayor or people elect a council member. And so they addressed this, but some of the conflicting language was left in there. And the CRC from 2021 recommend clarifying and removing the conflicting language. And after talking to Cliff's office, I have a big bold note, by having the vice mayor only assume the duties, so he doesn't get sworn in as mayor, simply assuming the duties, much like if the mayor were out during a meeting, the vice mayor assumes the duties, it would create a council of only 4 members until the next election. So you would not be replacing the vice mayor because he would remain seat 1, seat 2, seat 3, seat 4. He would just be assuming the duties. So that, just want to clarify, that creates its own, could create its own issues. A 2-2 is a denial. So the question would be, shall the City of Maitland's charter be amended to provide that in the event of a vacancy in the office of mayor, the vice mayor shall assume the mayor's duties until a replacement mayor is elected, and the voters shall elect a replacement mayor at the next scheduled municipal election where there is sufficient time for candidates to qualify. And we left the qualifying language in there because if there was a vacancy in February, there would not be time to qualify and have ballots printed. That vice mayor would serve until the following election. So it could be a year, 13 months with 4 members of council. So, any questions on that one?
So I guess, let me just, so if there is, one assumes the position of mayor and so they can't fill the council seat like they normally would fill a council seat?
Right, because in the past what would happen is you didn't just assume the duties, you became the mayor.
Right.
Here, it's just like your vice mayor now, you'd be assuming the duties for a longer period of time, but you would not be sworn in as mayor, as opposed to in the past, you'd be sworn in as mayor, your seat would be vacated, your seat would then be filled.
So we'd only have 4 members.
You'd have 4 members of council. Because when the election happens, you go back to your seat.
That
As-
doesn't seem
as a-
ideal. I mean, I don't know, but a 2-2 potential in every vote seems.
That'll be every 3rd or 4th vote.
Yeah, I think the impetus here was as a fairness matter to the person who takes over as mayor. And I think the idea was, let's just say, I get hit by a bus,
Right.
Vance fills in, and Vance has got 2.5 years left on his council member seat, but I've only got 6 months left on my mayor's seat when I was dispatched. Then Vance takes my seat, and when my term is over, Vance is done. He doesn't go back to being a councilman. He got his moment in the sun, 6 months, but he was elected to a council member seat, but he's being robbed of 2.5 years of being a council member because he had to stand in for the mayor.
I think you'd actually have to run
Yeah.
for that
Yeah,
seat.
no, I get it. I just don't know how you get away from the 2-2 vote.
Yeah, so-
And what you just laid out, John, it seems that.
That was the impetus.
Yeah, I get it.
Mhm.
And I think it's the just way of handling that one. I just don't know how you handle the 2-2 vote. Like, I think from a makeup of council, the theory of what you just said is right. I just don't know how you get around a potential 2-2 vote for 13, 14 months.
Well, what is
in
the-
worst case scenario?
The procedure for getting somebody else on board now, do you still have to wait for an election to get somebody on board?
So if, what happened in the past, mayor vacancy occurs, vice mayor is sworn in as the mayor. Now the vice mayor's seat, whatever seat that is open, you would appoint someone to fill until the next election, and then someone would be elected.
But I guess what I'm asking is, okay, so somebody leaves their seat up here, right? And the mayor's gone, and you have 4 members of council. How currently do we get the 5th person on board?
Why not?
If it isn't the mayor, then someone is
It's got to be
appointed.
the mayor because it's about the mayor, yeah.
Yeah. So if Mike were to leave now, then you would appoint someone until the next election to fill that vacancy.
So-
What happened is the way this works, the vice mayor, whatever seat the vice mayor is, he or she does not give up their seat, so you don't have a seat to appoint someone to.
I see. So in my scenario, Vance would have to take my seat, and he gets cheated out of his 2.5 years, but we would have appointed somebody else to, and we would have had 5.
You would have had 5, and then you would have elected someone to fill that seat,
Right.
Vance's seat.
Well, that-
And Vance could choose to run for that seat if,
You want the glory of being vice mayor, you take the risk. Hey, that's, I don't know.
But that's what happened a few years ago, right?
I think a lot of this came in reaction to somebody running for office as mayor, being elected, serving for a short period of time, someone who just got elected, then being appointed now as mayor, who didn't run for mayor for the remainder of that term.
I think we're overthinking this and delving into past personality. And I just don't think the current system is all that broken.
I think, John, you described a scenario, John, that makes a lot of sense to be sensitive to. I just don't know. It's kind of like the balance, right? I think that's a very valid point. The question is, does the creation of a potential 2-2 on 4 members of council, does that...
For potentially a year.
Yeah, does that overweigh the legitimate concern of saying, hey, you're kind of messing with the makeup of council? So it's sort of a...
Well,
a lesser evil.
I kind of see one, we're actually dealing with the operation of the city and hindering that operation for a year, and the other one we're dealing with, oh gee, I'm on council and I get cheated out of my year or two. So
I agree.
I don't see those as equitable at all. I don't see that as...
I agree. I think that one, it's like I said, it's picking the worst problem.
Yeah.
So.
Because there's conflicting language in there, it says both that the vice mayor will serve the remainder, and it also says the vice mayor will only serve until the next election. Some sort of clarification does need to happen, so I think the easiest thing is to say, which do you prefer? The potential 4 council members until the next election, or just having the vice mayor serve out the term of the mayor and appointing someone till the next election for that?
So you were part of that.
Do we know if you fill in for the mayor, does that count towards how many times you can, the 6 years you can have as a mayor? If I did 2 years, can I do 8 years, or do I do 5 years?
You are only serving in your seat. You're not serving in a mayor's term. So if you are under a scenario where you just serve until the next election, you're only assuming the duties. You're still seat 1, seat 2, seat 3, so you're council member. Doesn't count as mayor term. In the event that you go the other way and you serve the rest of the mayor's term, it would depend on how long that term was, whether it counted. If it's more than 2 years, it counts, I believe, or he has a full term.
Well, isn't an easy way to deal with this to say, and go back to the scenario I pointed out, that if Vance takes over as he's vice mayor, he becomes mayor, the election is held and somebody else is elected as mayor, Vance just goes back to being a councilman for the remainder of his prior term.
And then so then essentially your appointment would only be a temporary appointment? Can you do that?
So are you saying rather than waiting for the next scheduled election, hold a special election for the mayor?
I think they're saying if we fill somebody, I'm seat 4, okay? I go and I take over the responsibility for mayor. Do we find somebody to fill in my seat 4 while I take the duties of mayor, and then after the next election, that person who temporarily filled that seat would come off, I would retake my seat?
Oh, man.
No, I think that's the kind of the scenario, right? Is that what we were looking at? So, and then I would just go back to my original seat as seat 4.
Well, actually, what I was saying was, if the mayor's seat is what's becoming vacant here, so we're talking about the mayor's seat, and the vice mayor steps up and becomes temporary mayor.
Well, temporary, he's sworn in as mayor?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so he's the mayor.
He's the mayor. He's got all the vast powers that the mayor has. And he then a new mayor is elected, right? We have a special election or at the next election, whenever that occurs. You don't, since you've elected a new mayor, you haven't elected a new council seat 4. You would just go back to council seat 4.
But you still have the problem of that potential 2-2 vote until
the election, right?
Yeah, that's the scenario. All like what Mike was saying, the whether or not you get to serve a full term and how that works out is sort of one thing. It's the creation of the 2-2 vote for. I mean, maybe you could. I don't know. Like I think Mike said, we might be overdoing this one, but I mean, we could do it as a time limit if there's more than 6 months.
I mean, if the president's killed, the vice president doesn't serve till the next, I mean, it's just.
I kind of like where Sharon was going with special election. I know it's probably
I
now
don't
like
want
20.
how much is that, 25,000?
Yeah,
I
I mean,
don't-
we're
I don't-
worried about ourselves instead of the function of the city, to be honest, so.
John, you were involved, I mean, you probably put more thought into this, because you were on,
Yeah, that was about, I mean, these were the same debates that were going on
Yeah.
there at that level. And I guess this is the one that, I don't know that anybody put it so concisely as you all just did about, we're talking about somebody's political future here, we're talking about the functioning of the city. But in those terms,
I mean, when we got to choose the vice mayor, maybe somebody's got a year left in their term will want to do it, but maybe somebody else who wants to do it, we just have to roll the dice and take his chances. It's just.
And I think Mr. Thomas might have a point there. It's like, listen, we all got onto this for the betterment of the city. So I kind of see where you're going with that. That's kind of the roll of the dice, like you said.
I think John's going to serve a long and healthy term.
He's been living
You hope, right?
I'm not worried about this whatsoever.
All his kids are out of the house, so I think that increases his lifespan according to the table, so.
none of the macabre and early terminations of the earlier mayors will befall me. All right, well, since we're not making any decisions tonight, I think we kind of have the same idea about that one. We should probably allow Lindsay to have a shot at this too when she comes back, so we'll have a discussion.
So I think Sharon, on that though, I think you're saying some clarification needs to be made no matter what. So I think then maybe come back the next meeting with, if we decide to kind of keep it sort of how we do it, what would be your clarification?
It's just a deleting a sentence that's in conflict.
So that would be my only.
Yeah,
Next
it doesn't
meeting.
require a lot.
Yeah, propose the alternative to that.
Okay, term limits. So in 2012, the following question was on the ballot, and I wanted to put this in here because Councilmember Hall Harrison did mention that this was an issue that was decided in 2012. And it was Charter Amendment number 3, and it was called clarification of mayoral term limits. Shall the Maitland Charter be amended to provide clarification that the city's 2 consecutive term limit in office renders a mayor who has served 2 consecutive terms as mayor ineligible to run for office of city council member at the next city election? So that was the question. And here's the reasoning from the 2012 CRC report, the one that was written prior to those questions going out to the voters. There was unanimity among the commission in terms of the appropriateness of distinguishing between the mayor and council member positions when addressing eligibility and term limit matters. They recommended the 2-term limit requirement for mayor be retained. However, council members running for election as mayor may not be prohibited from running as mayor due to their prior service on council. And that came because of the way the seats are and the way it's council, mayor, and they felt like it created some unfairness among the seats. So that was resolved, and that's not something we're talking about tonight. The proposed language, just the last sentence, clarifies that once the mayor has served 2 terms, the mayor must sit out 1 full election cycle before standing for election. So this is where the confusion came in. In the charter, the term limits and eligibility are listed 3 different ways. So, and this is where the 2021 CRC got involved. So mayor only, in that section 201F, it's only talking about the mayor, says 1 full election cycle. Again, referring to mayor only in 201C says next regular city election. Neither of these are defined as to terms as what is the election cycle. No one on the CRC could tell you. They all had different opinions about what the election cycle was. Maria can't tell you exactly what the election, we think of it one way. Somebody said it's the qualifying period. Someone said it's qualifying until March. Someone said it was from April until the next March. So there is no consensus, and then for any candidate, council or mayor, in 201D, it says one regular city election of mayor or council, approximately 1 year, shall have been held, and talks about in past tense before you're eligible. So this is where there was questions having to go to the city attorney about saying, is someone eligible or not? And they wanted to clean that up. And so just to give you sort of a timeline, I think we all understand how it works for the council, but for the mayor, here's the date, the event, and the mayor's status. So a mayor who terms out on April of year 0, so they termed out, served 2 full terms, is ineligible for the March of the following year next city election. The words say ineligible for the next city election. We would consider the next city election to be the one that happens after they're termed out. So not the mayoral election while they're still seated, but the next one, which would be March of 1 year later. And then they would be eligible for March 2 years later. So this is the way it was interpreted from the city attorney, and the way it makes sense if you think about they couldn't run for mayor, and that's the election that would be happening while they were termed out in their final term. They are ineligible for the next one, that would be March of whatever it is 1. They would be eligible for March whatever it is 2. So as it's the way the code reads now, this is how it's interpreted. A council member stays out 1 cycle, and a mayor would stay out 2.
But it's not even 1 cycle, right? So this,
It's not, there's cycle, term,
but
it's,
this is,
yeah.
what I'm trying to understand is, so when we say you sit out, so the way we come off in April, right, technically, but the elections are held obviously a month prior, and you qualify 3 months prior to that, or whatever the specific case is. So that doesn't count. That one never counts under what we're saying is that the one that would be skipped would
Yeah.
be the one forward. But I don't know is that really the way it's been?
it's the way it reads for the mayor. There's 2 that address the mayor only. For the council, there's been an opinion from the city attorney that say you term out in April. Let's not talk about a council member who wants to run for mayor. Say you term out in April, you can qualify in January, because when you are appointed in the following April, you've been out a year.
So if we didn't do anything, it's kind of what the voters intended back when, that a mayor sits out 2 terms and a council member sits out 1. So all this sort of confusion aside, that's our city attorney's interpretation, and that's pretty much what the voters intended. So if we left it alone, it just stays like that.
Stays like it is.
I don't know, Mike. I'm not sure that's. I think there seems to be confusion even amongst city on as to what. So I mean, I think a clarification of what you sit out would be important. Whether we decide to have 2 different standards for mayor versus city council, I would.
For the next meeting, we can give you the city attorney's opinion on those 2 questions, because they were separate questions because the mayor's addressed separately. One was regarding when could a termed out mayor run for a city council seat, and then the other one was in the past.
Is this a binding, the city attorney, is his interpretation of this, the law of the land, or?
Actually, it's up to us. So the council makes the final decision if somebody challenges the eligibility.
Okay.
I think my thought is, coming to the meetings and listening, there's some history behind, when this was written up and what was happening at the time in the political jungle of Maitland, I guess. But I'd just like to see some consistency. I would like to see, what I can do as a council person, I should be able to do as a mayor. If it's 1 or 2 years, whatever we decide, I think it needs to be consistent with whatever that position is.
Well, so I have a couple of thoughts about this. One is that I'm looking at the CRC report, and their question number 3 is different than that question. And I don't know if that's...
This is their question, this is from 2012.
Okay.
I'm sorry, here's the 2021.
So the 2021, so currently, the law as we know it is that a mayor has to sit out 2 years, and a council member has to sit out 1 year. Nevertheless, this says we want to amend to clarify that a mayor has only to sit out 1 year. So we're not clarifying that, we would actually be changing it so that a mayor has to sit out 1 year. So I think that's, I don't think it's intentional, but I think it's misleading. We're not clarifying anything, we're amending this so that a mayor will be out 1 year, is what that will come to. So I think we really need
To provide, instead of clarify, to provide
Right.
a mayor or council member to serve.
if that's what we want to do. But I think it couldn't be any clearer to me that what, in fact, it says at the bottom of this, the charter, it says the intention of this section is that a mayor who has served 2 consecutive terms shall not be eligible to be a candidate for a position in city council without waiting 1 city election cycle. So if you're saying he comes off in April, you become a candidate in January. You can't. So, you will not have sat out any cycles if we're doing it this way. If we're saying you can run the next year, you will not have sat out any cycle at all. You will have come off as mayor and jump right back in, which is, I think, the reason why you have to sit out a cycle. And it ends up being 2 years. Well, it's not 2 years, 18 months, 19 months before, 21 months before you qualify to be a candidate again. But that's what the charter says, and that's what we have. So we're not clarifying that it's 1 year. We're actually changing it so that it would be 1 year. And I don't think we need to do that. I think we've had this. This is what the charter says. It's 2 years.
Well, and I agree with that. I agree with Lindsay's. I agree with Karen Sinsek, but so that it's vague. The question would come to us to resolve because it's vague.
If somebody, and the way the charter reads,
Yes.
if a candidate said, listen, I disagree with your city attorney's interpretation and I want a hearing at the council.
You're the
then
ultimate judge.
We are the judge.
So we could just have language to clear up the vagueness and be done with it and leave it like it is.
We'd have to have a charter amendment on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's vague as it's read now. I mean, it says 1 election cycle, but in its interpretation, it is 2 years for the mayor and 1 year for a council person.
But, and God, I hope I'm not sounding stupid, but the fact that it's somewhat confusing, it's not cut and dry that that's the case, and so if someone challenged it, then the council would be the arbitrators of that.
Yes. So I think that this should be clarified. I would suggest we do amend it to clarify it, but clarify it to be what the intent currently is, and lose a bunch of language. I don't know, Sharon, do you have the strike-through version of the charter up there? It was provided, I got it off the last agenda that we had when it went out. And I think you can see kind of graphically, when you look at actually section 201, I think it's exhibit C to the charter review.
Yeah, I don't have it down here.
Yeah, and the way I got there was to go through my city clerk with the clerk portal and go to the last, the 927 agenda, and then call it.
I think so what you're trying to say, what, John, then?
Well, that what happened was, over time, the charter kept being adjusted on this matter for a while, and rather than clarifying and simplifying, what they did was just to add more stuff to it, and it becomes somewhat confusing. And that's why
the terms became inconsistent.
Yeah, and so I think if we just say, we're not going to say whether you sit out an election cycle, whether you can be a candidate or whatever, you're not eligible to hold office until X. We can make up the X, whether it's a year or 2 years, but just say you're not eligible to hold office, and that just that gets rid of this whole election cycle stuff, and it gets rid of all the, that's just a clear policy decision, because the way this is written now, as I said, is you will not, it is the intention not to allow a two-term mayor to even be a candidate without waiting one city election cycle. So, if we just say, or the city council person, you cannot hold the office, you're ineligible to hold the office until 1 year after or 2 years after, whatever it's going to be. But get rid of all the stuff about election cycles, because they don't make any sense. They don't, unless you go to the trouble of defining an election cycle, nobody really knows what it means.
The mayor cannot hold elected offices until 2 years after his step-down day, basically.
Right. And if you look at it graphically, like, what they did here was strip it down by about 3/4. They've lost 3/4 probably the verbiage in here, and which doesn't get you anywhere. Just you keep adding to it, it just becomes more confusing. So I think what we probably should just, and again, I don't know that Lindsay's point, that as I read it, was that she didn't want to go back and ask the voters again for a question we've already asked them.
Right, but we're not, we're just asking them to clarify with it.
Right, that's what I said. So we're not, I think that we would not be running counter to Lindsay's position, because we're not asking that. What we're asking is to clarify, to make it what our current interpretation is, just so there's no further, confusion about it. So, and again, we're not making a decision tonight. We should probably wait and have that discussion about it.
But my question is, why do we allow council members to run a shorter time than the mayor? Why is
That to
it?
me, we have 2 years for council.
That's what I'm saying. Let's make it so it's it's even. I mean,
I
it
think
makes sense.
whatever
you do,
we need turnover up here, and so to me, when someone runs within a year after, if I step down from office and then there's an open seat the following year, and I basically start running for it the day I step down from office, and I have the name recognition or whatever, I think I'm basically running with the power of an incumbent. And so I would make the council 2 years as well, but I don't want to step on this work and complicate it. So
well, that's kind of why it's said to us to go over this and
Then you would
make
have
those
prevented,
decisions.
you would have prevented our fine mayor from.
Yeah, so
unless, and yeah, that's a good point. I thought about that, and I thought, well, unless you're running for mayor, but then things get really
Look, I think-
complicated, so maybe we just leave it.
So, here's what my, and I know we can move on, because we're not here. I'm thinking that if the thought is just to clarify it,
Yeah.
I think we may be able to clarify. Let me say this, I preface this that I think we should go out with as few questions as possible, in my opinion. So if the purpose of the question is just a clarification, I think we could try to clarify it, especially if what we've decided is the city council is the ultimate arbiter of, or decider, I should say, of a dispute on this. You could come up with, and now any future council could change, makeup could change their mind, but if you have a precedent that says that this is the way it's interpreted, so that if people, we kind of have an agreement on, if someone wants to check this, this is how city council as of 2021, with advice of council, determined and deciphered this provision. I would just, I don't know that I would go out to the question just for the purpose of clarity.
I would, because I could just see something,
I mean,
somebody leaving office and working in council becomes more of a political than a legal process, and so to me, to avoid that scenario, just go to the voters and say we're clarifying that you did not want the mayor to be out of office for 2 years after his last day.
So the question really is, in 2012, city voted for this, the text was potentially ambiguous, so we're seeking to amend the charter to clear up the ambiguity. I mean, hope we don't make it ambiguous again.
right.
Essentially.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
We promise we'll do a better job.
I would just rather have everything cut and dried now rather than have some scenario unfold in the future that.
I think, Mike, the question, is it ambiguous? I mean, I guess that would be my first, and I haven't studied it, all the wording enough.
Seems to be.
Well, I mean, do we think it's ambiguous now or not, Sharon? I mean, that's what I'm trying to clarify. It sounds like we seem settled that it's this way, but, and John, what do you think? You've probably read this more than...
Yeah, I've read it, and I've read Cliff's memorandum about it, and I'm not in complete agreement with that memo, although we come to the same conclusion. So, I mean, I don't know if that means that it is open to too many interpretations, but, and I would also say, I mean, to go a little further than, in what Karen Simasek said in her charter review minority report was, and just kind of to answer your question, Vance, why is it different from I don't want to get into a debate about this, but I'm just going to give you her rationale. Her rationale was that the mayor, although the council seat and the mayor's seat are, everybody has one vote, that the mayor's office really has kind of the bully pulpit, you kind of have a much more public persona, or you can have, and you can appear at public events, and you can have more and cut ribbons, and you can, so you have, coming into an election, if it's right on the heels of your exit, it can appear as if you never really left and you're running again as an incumbent. That was her position. And a council person has some of the same ability to do that, but it's just a little bit less pronounced.
Well, I have to agree with Mr. Thomas. I think, the whole thing I'm saying is, let's keep it consistent as if I have to sit out, you have to sit out. Because to his point where we need some new turnover, some new blood, I think maybe, we could generate some interest of other people. Try to councilize.
I think.
How many people have gotten off here and turned around a year later and ran for office on their city council?
I appreciate that, Max. I just think getting there from here right now is, we're in the same mindset, but it's just, I think we just need to get something simple on the ballot and maybe address that down the road.
Another 10 years?
Yeah,
Take the can down?
I would be for the clarification of what our current position is. I don't know that I want to put a question to ask voters to change again, like one said.
I'm with you in spirit there.
All right, so we'll have, I don't know if that is very helpful to you all. I mean,
Yeah.
we had 4 different opinions of how to go forward on that, and y'all, I'm sure we'll sit
Yeah,
through.
I mean, clearly it's one, if you look at, I put it up on the screen there and I can email it if anyone wants to try to read through it, but it's been amended in 89, 94, 98, 98 again, and 2012. So it's obviously an area of contention in terms, and so what happens is they just strike through an underline and it's sort of gained a lot of weight in different areas, and that's where the confusion comes in.
Which is
So I
what
think we
John
can-
said.
I think we can simplify it,
Yeah.
As soon as our land development code, just change it and keep changing it.
Yeah, you wish you could start from scratch
There and-
on some of
Yeah.
these, yeah.
Okay, so we'll take it to the next one. Sure. Another biggie.
Okay, the next one is elected official salary. The salary that's in there has not been updated. It just simply says update with the CPI, and we keep a running total of it. And the CRC talked back and forth about updating that amount, but then felt like it wasn't really necessary to go. I mean, whether they approve it or not, it is what it is. We just keep track of it. But they did come up with wanting to eliminate the provision for decreasing the mayor and council members' salaries. So when the consumer price index declines, the salaries of the mayor and council follows that. So the CRC felt that's consistent with how salaries are typically treated. And so in the year that the CPI declines, the mayor and council members would receive no increase instead of a decrease.
So we talked,
All right.
I don't, there's not enough money here. Everybody, I mean, it's
$308 speaking
there's not enough money. The change isn't worth it, and just to keep this short and simple. I think, and I appreciate the logic behind it. I think it's good logic. I just think to keep the questions to the minimum, I would include this.
Heartily second that.
Yeah, I agree. We don't do this for the money, so
Yeah,
it's not problematic.
And it could be seen as kind of a grab by the council.
Of the negative.
A negative cash grab, yeah.
41 cents less.
Well, with all the bribes we're getting too, I think.
Okay, so we're down to the final one, which is clarifying that members of council are not prohibited from discussing appointments and removals of officers and employees with persons other than the city manager. So currently it says you cannot discuss appointments and removals with anyone other than the city manager. And the concern was that as it's written, should a member of council discuss that with a resident or a member of the media, it could be a charter violation, you know, and that would be unintentional, but it creates its own charter violation for something as simple as that. So this would be amending to clarify that council members are not prohibited from discussing appointment and removal of city officers with persons other than the city manager.
Yeah, I think that's kind of gobbledygook, and I just don't see a need for it. I don't think any person reading that would really understand what it's about at all. And I just have never seen this as a problem. So again, in the spirit of not throwing stuff on the ballot that doesn't really have to be there, I wouldn't throw this on there.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mike, because this was mine.
I was sitting here dying. I was like, this is great, dude.
Oh, I didn't somebody kick me.
Oh, that was awesome.
That's all right.
I saw it coming a mile away. That was awesome.
Well done, sir.
It's true that Mr. Lans's not buying this much.
Okay, we're done. No, so this, it came from a news article that I saw about a year ago, or a year and a half ago, when there was a city council person in Virginia, I think it was, and she was on city council. There was some item, it might have been with the police department or fire department or something, and she was just a council person and they had a charter just like ours, or very like ours. And she was asked by the press what she thought of Officer X's activity that day. She said, I think it was perhaps too much, or she criticized the officer in some way. And nobody thought anything about it. Nobody was like, well, okay, fair enough. I mean, you're an elected official, and you move on. Some citizen figured out that the charter, what does our charter say, that we cannot discuss with anybody, with my wife, with the press,
Only with the city manager.
I can only talk to you about city employees and officers. And so this guy figured this out because his charter said the same thing. And he, I don't know if he succeeded in getting the city council person removed because it was not because of what she said or because what she said was wrong or because there was any, it was her opinion, but because she technically violated the charter, the city's charter, by discussing the activity of a city employee with anybody. So it just, when I read that, I was like, geez, really? I mean, you can do that? Somebody just by accidentally talking about a city employee, you can be removed from city council because he violated the charter.
So you give up really being a citizen.
Yeah, you have no more First Amendment rights as far as that goes. So that struck me as something that could be easily cleaned up by just saying, this doesn't prohibit somebody from discussing, what does it actually say? It does not prohibit council members from fully and freely discussing matters pertaining to the appointment or removal of officers or employees when not stated as a direction to the city manager. So as it currently stands, the only person in the world that any of us can talk to about any city employee is the sheriff. Now, you can't. If you're
Well,
a grocery
specifically
store-
about you should hire Joe or you should fire Joe.
Right, and there's a reason for that. Yeah, right, because you don't want to talk to other people or talk somebody up or down, or there's a reason for it, but it seems to be kind of a very broad and deep kind of So there, Mike, what do you have to say?
It makes total sense now.
So, I mean, it is a theoretical problem for us. Nobody's, unless I just advise the world how to get us removed from council, it's not something that plagues us every day or that should be a problem, but it is something that's easily resolved if we want to take care. But my feelings won't be hurt any further than they already are about not pursuing it.
I think it's a good, I think it's a good change. It's actually weird the way it was originally written, because it's saying you can only talk to the city manager. But then we're changing it to say that you just can't tell the city manager that they've got to take some action, right? I mean, so I don't know, so if you were displeased with somebody in the staff, the way it's written there, John, I'm looking at the proposed change language.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were displeased with someone on staff, you couldn't go to the city manager and say, I think that person should go?
I don't think that, I don't think we do that. I think we let Sharon hire and fire folks who might.
No,
But you can say you're displeased, but
Yeah.
you can't say, and you will fire them tomorrow.
No, understood, yeah, but I'm trying to understand that, because, I guess you would never dictate what I'm trying to understand is that if there was a problem with somebody on staff, you wouldn't want to not be able to come and say to them, express your displeasure with the city manager, right? I think that's...
Theoretically, since firing people doesn't come to council, I could talk to Vance about, let's get Chief Manuel fired here.
Right. Well, I guess the thing that I think what we're trying to get at is, you can say anything you want to about city staff or city employees, so long as you don't state it as a direction to the city manager to take certain action on an officer or an employee. So yes, you can go write a complaint and direct to Sharon, or you can write to somebody at Publix, or you can, but you can't tell Sharon. And that's the whole point of this thing that I think, and I could be undercutting here, but I think the whole point of charter provisions like this, and like I said, it was the same in Virginia. I think these are quite a cookie cutter thing from a different era, was to keep council people from bigfooting city managers, and pressuring them into hiring my daughter or firing, a guy that was rude. So that's really, other than that, we should be able to talk to anybody we want to about anybody at all.
I mean, so, to double down, get someone, so we can talk, but we can't give Sharon specific direction, but if I say, well, I really do not like so-and-so in public works, or I really do not, I mean, and I'm technically 20% of her boss, that pretty much is the same thing as telling her she needs to fire a guy. I mean, if I said that publicly, or I said that, so I don't know.
It may be not worth the subject taking on. It just struck me that it kind of curtailed discussion further than it really needed to.
It's almost like if you're supposed to almost speak in, it's like promoting the speaking in hiding intentions, I guess, is, I think
You say things like, so how much do you like your job? Hey, that guy in Public Works?
Didn't your review tell me I'm next?
Yeah, and my son needs a job, but...
I think there's I get your point though, John, because it's saying, I guess the question is, do we read it in such that it says, you just can't come out and say, so-and-so should be fired, but you could go on TV or talk to whoever and say, this person's doing a terrible job. So as it stands now, that scenario isn't prohibited.
Right, I think it's that instance where something happens and a microphone is shoved in your face, and you hear something egregious, and you go, well, if he did that, he should be fired.
Right,
It's sort of that.
Right.
And that's not what this was intended to prevent. This is definitely a council manager versus strong council form of government, because they are different in the model depending on which one you have, because obviously in Orlando or other places, they confirm staff department,
Right.
you know what I mean?
And I guess the question is, if you were to go on, let's say you did get a TV person, and you said, yeah, that person should go, is that dictating?
It's discussing their hiring or firing with
Right,
someone
but
else.
it's, I mean, I read this to say, like, you can't come out and say, you have got to fire this person, or you're gonna be held accountable. Right? Or am I mean, the way I'm reading it, it's not, again, like everything, you can interpret it in several different ways, but I think one logical interpretation is just to say you can't, you can't do something that in any way will dictate the appointment or removal.
But saying that somebody's lousy at their job sort of in some way does that.
I don't know, I think it's short of, I think when I
If you
read
said
the-
in any way, so if you can't use to say something in any way that would impact somebody's job.
But it doesn't
You say
say
they're
that.
lousy at their job.
But it doesn't say that. To me, the operative word in that is dictate. And I think the word dictate is very much limiting what the scope of that is. I think you saying even this person's not fit for whatever, or I think you'd have to come out and say, this person's gotta be fired, or, I'm gonna burn the place down. It's gotta be I don't know, maybe
I think that's sort of a difference between, how people interpret things in the real world and how you would interpret a strict, legal definition of something. Because, anybody who would hire a city manager is going to be smart enough to see where the tea leaves are if we start grumbling about somebody.
I mean, we got another lawyer right there, asking what his thoughts are.
Well, it's essentially an anti-interference provision. And dictate is a strong word. It's a prohibition on dictating the appointment or removal. Will somebody use the ability to freely discuss it with others for political means to talk about, an election campaign, what a great or bad job the city manager is doing as part of an election campaign? Probably. But I think that technically, if you want to make it so that doesn't violate the charter, that's just politics. That's up to you.
Well, the fact that it takes us this long to explain it and discuss it kind of indicates that, that the voters are.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, that'll get lost.
So, honestly, I'm not offended by it.
By the gobbledygook?
Yeah, that would be good.
I think I would, if I were to, and again, I think this can be interpreted, I just think I would tie it to the dictate and say it's a strong word.
And that suffices.
I don't know. I mean, I see your point, John, and I think if we could do it succinctly, I don't think it's a bad cleanup, but again, it's sort of one of those things.
Yeah.
How do you phrase it?
Right. All right, you all have, again, we're not making any decisions tonight, but I guess, what do we think here, Mark, that we're going to, or Sharon, are we going to come back one more time and?
Yeah,
have a full
I can bring it
discussion
back
with
as
Lindsay here?
discussion, or I can bring it back as a drafted ordinance. You may want to have more conversation when Lindsay's here, so I hate to draft up an ordinance and then. But so, of the 5, gender neutral language, not an issue, we can bring that forward. More conversation on the vacancy of the mayor's office, I think, in terms of the 2 different scenarios and what the implications would be and whether there's a hybrid. I don't think so. I did talk to Cliff, or Jacob, I should say, about that. The waiting period, simplify that. I think we can do that and talk about when you can hold office again, ignoring cycles and elections and election cycles and next regular elections. We're not going to worry about 4 and 5. So it's really just the first 3.
Well, I think 5 is potentially worth. I think 4 is out.
Okay.
Are we really in that big of a hurry to?
I think we need to kind of make sure that we have it too. What is the time on this? We want to get it built house, we put it on the March election referendum. So that's our drop dead. I mean, so
Yeah.
then we had to back it up several months and then draft up the ballots and put on like.
It also
Because I
needs to
know
be.
we're already putting so much on the next meeting that, you know.
Right. Well,
Well, the questions have, once y'all approve the questions that go on the ballot, then they have to go to somebody to have them translated in Spanish, and then both in English and Spanish, then they go to the supervisor election. And I think the proper would be the late, mid-December. That way that gives them time to set it up in the format and everything of the questions that we have. At least we don't have 29 questions.
That's if we even are trying to get it on the next.
Correct.
I mean, if you were trying to defer it to the election after that,
The 2020.
the 23 election, it becomes.
Yes, none of this is a rush.
No, that's what I think
yeah,
too.
well, it's gonna, yeah, so to your point, Sam, that, yeah, I don't want to weigh down any agendas necessarily that are, next time around. I guess next time around, we deferred a couple of decisions tonight that we're gonna have to take out, so only one of them should give us any
Okay.
slow it down more.
Okay, yep, so we'll assume the next one, but we'll look at the agenda when it starts getting full, we can push it to November.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. All right, so we are done with the discussion items, or this is the reports section of the evening. City Attorney, do you have any reports for us?
The only report, I think you all already know about it, but the bid bond matter has been resolved. That was the only other thing that I wanted to share with you. You didn't know about it.
And the other issue was the dismissal of the
Yeah.
P-4.
Which, yeah, the Peacock Board action was dismissed, but it is dismissed without prejudice, so if they could allege a cause of action, they can refile.
So, how about that 30 days, do that? All right, thank you. City Manager, Assistant City Manager?
Nothing?
Nothing? Any council members?
Yeah.
Do anything to say?
Can I quickly chip in? In the past, we've mentioned the possibility of, or the, not possibility, but of moving the farmer's market to our new square here, create some synergy in business for the folks over there. And I guess there's some construction, I think Mark told me about, and I was just wondering if there's a date on that, because I had one in mind if there was.
You say construction on where, Lake Lily or?
Lake Lily,
Okay.
yeah. There's the overlook needs to be reconstructed, and the second phase is fix some of those drainage problems on the west side where water stands. So those two projects that are getting under, one's already designed, the other one's in design. The issue is we don't want to be disrupting the art festival or season of light. So we don't want to be under construction during those two events. That would push us after season of light, so the first of the year.
So, I talked about this before. I think that we built this whole thing out here basically it's set for a farmer's market. I mean, we have the wider sidewalks, we have everything, and it really accomplishes our goal of driving more business to these guys and creating events that people keep getting used to coming back here, since it's not an intuitive place to come. And so the fall is the nice time to do that when the weather's great, and so we have our first Friday or our bid down, and that would be November 5th. And so I would propose that we start the farmer's market on the 7th of November here and use the Get Down to sort of promote that and start getting the word out and the promotions out. And I think that would, I just think that's a huge win, because you're going to have the vendors out here, you're going to have 300 or 400 people right there that just have to walk downstairs and come out and get their organic honey. People who come for their organic honey, you're not just going to buy your honey and get in your car and go home. You're going to, maybe go across the street and since it's Sunday, you can get a beer and then or the Houndstooth and whatever these other eateries, and that's why Winter Park's Farmers Market's so nice, is you got the synergy going back and forth between the restaurant.
So is this construction, is it pushing, is it pushing us over here?
No, I want to push us over here.
No, but I'm saying, you were saying the construction, it sounded kind of like, oh, we have to move it. Is
Yeah,
this
we
something-
can't have construction going on in the farmer's market at the same time.
So we do have to bring it over here. I don't know if I would go for, well, we can't really talk about that, because this is really just more of a discussion, right?
Mhm.
So-
Yeah.
so-
Just, if anybody has an idea about it, I don't think there's anything that stops us from
So,
opinionating.
so Mike, is the, and Sharon and Mark, so would we close Independence and put it on Independence, or would you put it in the park?
Well, I would, and they can interrupt me, but I would see about closing Independence if possible or not. I don't know if we can do that. I don't think it's necessary to do that. But if it's in the park on a Sunday morning, I don't think there's going to be a lot of traffic anyway. So I just think it brings the farmer's market within reach of a lot more people, and it brings business to those businesses that really need business. So it creates a downtown feel. When I've gone to the farmer's market at Lake Lily, I'll kind of walk along, buy my thing, and get my car and go. There's just not a lot of stuff to hang around for.
See, I'd be up for, I would get it if we could close Independence. I don't think putting it in the park is a great, I wouldn't want it in the park.
Right.
I don't think we should, I think it'd be tough on the grass.
I kind of agree with that,
But I think having it on Independence is a good idea.
I think we give it a go, let them try it, see how it works. If it doesn't work well, then you just take it back to the lake and let it, right now it's working fine. I'd hate to move something and permanently do it if nobody likes it, and, because over there I know, you get your thing and go, but a lot of people bring their family, they play on the swings and everything, or the playground, and then they feed the ducks and they walk around the lake.
Could we close Independence, Mark?
Yeah.
Is that, Mark, Sharon, could we close Independence for it or not?
You can always close Independence as long as you give notice, but there is always a little bit of pushback from the businesses when we close Independence.
Yeah, so we might be kind of at cross purposes if we close Independence, because we've heard feedback from Houndstooth people, like we do on Friday night, when we close up, they kind of lose lunch business because nobody can park there, and they haven't acclimated themselves to the garage yet, so I don't know, maybe you could split the baby, and you could have the other side of the street parking and have the tents lined up on this side of Independence and then toward the park as well, it's not for us to decide up here, but
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. If we're going to be pushed out of the park anyway, and this is an idea that you've had for a while, Mike, I think it's a good one, is to give it a try up here and see if it does activate businesses.
I think it would be worth a try to close Independence and see how it goes. I just think having a farmer's market in that, I've looked at how those tents set up. I think we'll be surprised how quickly that park will fill, because you've got essentially, you'd have to do it on double layers, because if not, I don't think everything would fit in that top grass. area, maybe not. I mean,
Well,
I'm
if
just-
you combine them, I just, the whole idea of putting that out there and putting those wide sidewalks is to have events there, so.
I'm just remembering what it used to look like on Twin Strong, and it used to take up a good portion, and they were set up on that path too, so it was less, I don't know, anyway.
Does Rotary have, does anybody know, does Rotary have any want to set up their art festival here? Or do they just want to keep it down at the lake?
I think they want to keep it down, like,
There's some more room down there.
They use a civic center.
yeah.
Okay, well, I just kind of throw that out there.
All right, thank you.
I did the National Walk to School Day.
All right,
That was great. Met a lot of new West Side neighbors, and got to walk all the way from the church over there by the park all the way to Lake Sedalia. So, my wife is a Lake Sedalia grad, so I was glad to represent for the family out there. But no, it was great. I think Chief, last year was four or five people. This year was what, 50? Oh, it was awesome, man. A lot of great families, a lot of great kids, a lot of great energy.
Were they on the New Stansburg Trail? Did they use that?
No, we walked the lake.
Oh, okay.
Walked around the lake.
what is the lake cleanup again?
I was thinking of
That
rock and
is
roll.
next weekend, right? That's this weekend coming up.
The Lake Sevilla Lake cleanup this weekend?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, 16th or something.
Saturday, 8
Yeah.
o'clock.
Yeah, sadly, I'm out of town. That's always a good cleanup to do. If you have a little kayak or a paddleboard, take it out there and pick up all the stuff that's in the water out by that little dam.
All right. Well, that kind of language up here. All right. Mike, anything? Nothing? Good. All right. Then we are done. Thank you.
And that's my first time cursing.